The concept of a two-dimensional creature being robbed by a being from a higher dimension has captured the imagination of millions across the internet, transforming an abstract mathematical thought experiment into a viral cultural phenomenon. This fascination traces back to the 1884 publication of Edwin Abbott Abbott's satirical novella Flatland, a romance of many dimensions, a work that has served as the foundational text for understanding higher dimensions for over a century. In this remarkable book, Abbott introduced the world to a square, a humble geometrician living in a two-dimensional plane who is visited by a sphere from the third dimension, a meeting that fundamentally challenges his understanding of reality and sets the stage for a profound philosophical exploration of perception and knowledge. The book was later adapted into a 2007 animated film, and its concepts were famously used by Carl Sagan to explain the logic surrounding the fourth dimension to a global audience. The modern iteration of this timeless concept, the 2D Creature and Her Gems series of viral videos created by the Australian mathematical physicist and science communicator known as Tibees, has brought these abstract ideas to a new generation of viewers, making the mind-bending logic of higher dimensional space accessible, entertaining, and deeply thought-provoking through the simple, yet powerful narrative of a chalk-drawn creature and her precious gems. The story begins on December 19, 2022, when Tibees posted a deceptively simple video on TikTok that would eventually garner over 1.4 million plays and 200,000 likes in just over 2 weeks. In the video, she draws a crude, charming two-dimensional creature on a chalkboard, a small figure that resembles a girl, standing next to a square that she dubs a safe. Within this safe are 2 small gems, drawn as simple, sparkling shapes. Tibees then proceeds to explain, in her characteristically calm, Bob Ross-style voice, how she, as a three-dimensional being, can steal these gems from the two-dimensional creature without the creature ever knowing how it happened. To the two-dimensional creature, the safe is a completely enclosed square, a barrier that cannot be crossed. The creature exists in a world of length and width, with no concept of the third dimension of height, what we call up and down. For the creature, there is no above the safe, no way to reach into the square from a direction it cannot perceive. It can only perceive the boundaries of its two-dimensional plane, and its safe appears as an impenetrable enclosure. But Tibees, existing in a higher dimension, can simply reach her three-dimensional fingers into the two-dimensional world from above being a direction that is utterly incomprehensible to the flat creature. She plucks the gems from the safe, and from the creature's perspective, they simply vanish, seemingly by magic, as there is no physical entry or exit point within its observable plane. The video captures this perfectly, as she draws her own hand reaching in from outside the frame, illustrating the power of dimensional transcendence. This simple act of theft is not just a cute visual trick, it is a perfect pedagogical tool that grounds an abstract mathematical concept in a relatable narrative. The narrative demonstrates the fundamental asymmetry of knowledge and perception that exists between dimensions. To a three-dimensional being, the two-dimensional world is completely transparent. We can see inside every enclosed space, every house, every safe, and even inside the bodies of the creatures themselves, because we have a perspective that is inaccessible to them. The inhabitants of Flatland, however, are trapped in their own perspective, and their privacy is an illusion maintained only by their inability to perceive the dimension that surrounds them. If a Flatlander were to draw a circle around a criminal to imprison them, a three-dimensional being could simply reach down from above and lift the criminal out of the circle, an act that would appear as a miraculous disappearance to the Flatlander who has no word for up in their vocabulary. The Heist narrative, therefore, powerfully illustrates that what we consider to be impenetrable barriers are only barriers within our limited perceptual framework, and a being from a higher dimension could bypass them entirely by moving through a direction we cannot access. This is the core insight that made the video so compelling. It made the invisible, unimaginable fourth dimension tangible and even a little bit mischievous. The video's massive success on TikTok sparked a wave of creative and participatory responses that transformed a single educational video into a sprawling, multi-part narrative across the platform, generating millions more views and establishing the 2D creature as a minor internet celebrity. On January 10, 2023, Tibees posted a follow-up video responding to comments from viewers who felt sorry for the creature and asked her to give the gems back. In this new video, she returns the 2 stolen gems and, in an act of generosity, adds a 3rd gem, a bonus gift from the higher dimensional visitor. But the real brilliance of the second video lies in its conclusion. To ensure that the creature would not simply forget this bizarre visitation, Tibees performs a final, dimensionally impossible act. She reaches in and flips the creature's hat. For a 3-dimensional being, flipping a hat is a trivial act, but for a 2-dimensional creature, this is an impossibility. The hat is a 2-dimensional shape drawn on its plane, and flipping it would require rotation through the 3rd dimension, a direction the creature cannot access. From the creature's perspective, its hat would have changed orientation in a way that cannot be explained by any 2-dimensional rotation. It would be a permanent, inexplicable sign that it had been visited by a being from a realm beyond its comprehension. This clever twist demonstrates how a higher dimensional being could leave a physical signature that would serve as undeniable proof of their existence, a signature that would be logically impossible within the lower dimensional framework. The video gathered over 1.3 million views and 170,000 likes in just 2 days, showcasing the audience's deep engagement with the narrative and the underlying physics. The participatory nature of the phenomenon truly exploded as other TikTok creators began duetting the original videos, inserting themselves into the narrative and expanding the story in creative and often humorous ways. One duet video, by TikToker @TeflonJustice, went viral with over 2 million plays and 460,000 likes in just 2 days. In it, the creator, appearing as another 2-dimensional creature, reacts to the theft with shock and indignation, role-playing the perspective of the lower dimensional being and expressing the emotional confusion of a robbery that defies all logic. Another creator, @It'sJustAFun TikTok, posted a video posing as the distressed 2D creature herself, lamenting the loss of her gems with genuine seeming distress, which gathered over 800,000 plays and 160,000 likes in a day. These duet videos transformed the original educational concept into a shared, interactive universe where creators and viewers alike could explore the emotional and psychological implications of living in a universe where higher dimensional beings could interact with you without your knowledge or consent. The narrative had expanded far beyond the original educational intent and had become a form of collaborative storytelling where the abstract concepts of dimensional geometry were given a human, relatable, and often humorous face. The popularity of these duets speaks to the power of the metaphor, the idea that there could be forces operating outside our perception, stealing from us, or altering our reality without us ever being able to understand how, taps into a deep well of human curiosity, anxiety, and wonder. The phenomenon continued to grow as more creators joined the conversation. @mama_progress posted a duet video that gathered significant attention, playing with the 2D problems concept. @mins_rights_activia responded with a duet exploring the philosophical implications of dimensional theft. @MattyWex created a Stitch video that connected the 2D creature concept to broader mathematical and geometric discussions, exploring how dimensions affect our understanding of geometry and reality. @Robin_Glow also contributed a Stitch video, adding their own perspective to the ever-expanding narrative universe. Each new response added another layer to the story, creating a rich tapestry of interpretations, reactions, and extensions of the original concept. The 2D creature had become a cultural touchstone, a shared reference point for a community of creators and viewers who were collectively exploring the boundaries of perception and reality through the lens of a simple chalkboard drawing. The 2D creature and her gems videos, while incredibly viral, are far from the first time the concept of a higher dimensional heist has been explored. Indeed, the intellectual lineage of this idea stretches back to the earliest mathematical inquiries into higher dimensional space. The concept of a 4-dimensional robbery has been a staple of philosophical and mathematical thought experiments for over a century. Thinkers have long imagined how a being from a higher dimension could interact with our 3-dimensional world, bypassing our most secure barriers and challenging our fundamental assumptions about privacy and security. The language of the classic texts and the modern viral video are almost identical, proving that the core ideas have not changed in over a century. Only the medium of their transmission has evolved. The implications of this thought experiment are vast and have been explored in considerable depth by mathematicians, philosophers, and science communicators for decades. One of the most profound consequences is the idea of perfect omniscience and a complete loss of privacy. If a four-dimensional being were to observe our three-dimensional world, there would be nowhere for us to hide. They could see inside our homes, inside our bodies, and inside our most secure vaults, all at once, without any obstruction. To us, they would appear to be all-seeing, all-powerful beings, perhaps even gods. A four-dimensional creature could take a diamond from a locked display case by simply lifting it up into the fourth dimension to get around the sheet of glass. The creature's arm would never need to pass through the glass, the lock, or the alarm system, because it would move through a direction of space that the glass cannot block. This is a profound challenge to our conventional understanding of security, privacy, and the very nature of physical barriers. It forces us to realize that what we perceive as a solid, impenetrable wall is only solid within our three-dimensional perspective. The analogy, however, also comes with important limitations and clarifications that are essential for understanding the true nature of these hypothetical interactions. A common question arises: could a three-dimensional being interact with a two-dimensional creature if that creature is perfectly flat, with no thickness at all? The answer, as some thinkers have pointed out, is that such a creature would be as insubstantial as a shadow or a patch of light. They could not have a digestive system like ours, and they would not experience physical pain in the same way. A two-dimensional creature spearing your wrist would likely not cause you any harm, as they are not truly solid in three dimensions. Furthermore, a key limitation is that a three-dimensional being could not exist in a two-dimensional world, and vice versa. Just as a creature with no height cannot exist in our three-dimensional world because it would have no volume, we could not exist in a four-dimensional world because we would lack hypervolume. We are, in a sense, not compatible with the physics of higher-dimensional space. This clarifies that the interactions described are more about the projection of higher-dimensional space into lower-dimensional planes, rather than a true coexistence. Another fascinating implication of the dimensional heist analogy is the concept of how a higher-dimensional being would appear to a lower-dimensional observer. The classic example, drawn from the third chapter of Flatland and used by science communicators from Carl Sagan to Rudy Rucker, involves the passage of a sphere through a two-dimensional plane. If the sphere, a three-dimensional being, passes through Flatland, its two-dimensional inhabitants would not see the sphere itself. Instead, they would see a point that appears, grows into a circle of increasing radius, reaches a maximum size, and then shrinks back to a point and disappears. They would have no concept that this changing circle was the cross-section of a sphere moving through their plane. It would appear as a mysterious, impossible event. Applying this by analogy, if a four-dimensional hypersphere were to pass through our three-dimensional world, we would see a sphere that appears out of nowhere, grows to a certain maximum size, and then shrinks and disappears. This visualization is mind-bending, but it is a logical extrapolation from the Flatland example. It suggests that any encounter with a higher-dimensional being would be inherently strange and incomprehensible, leaving behind only baffling, non-repeatable phenomena that would challenge our understanding of physics. The 2D creature's experience of having her gems stolen and her hat flipped is precisely this kind of encounter, a series of events that are logically impossible within her two-dimensional framework, leaving her with confusion and the permanent, inexplicable signature of a flipped hat. The virality of the 2D creature and her gems has also sparked discussion about the nature of dimensions beyond the spatial ones. While the Tibees videos are clearly focused on the idea of a fourth spatial dimension, a common point of confusion is the distinction between time as a fourth dimension and a fourth spatial dimension. In modern physics, thanks to Einstein's theory of relativity, time is often described as the fourth dimension, meaning that we live in a four-dimensional spacetime. However, a fourth spatial dimension is a different concept entirely. It posits a direction of space that is perpendicular to our three familiar directions of length, width, and height, a direction that we cannot perceive or point to. The Heist analogy is purely about this spatial fourth dimension, where a being with access to this extra direction could perform seemingly impossible feats. Someone in the fourth spatial dimension could still experience time the same way we do. The dimension in question is a direction in space, not a dimension of time. The Heist narrative is a powerful way to illustrate this specific type of dimension, as it makes the abstract and invisible concept of a fourth spatial direction tangible and relatable. Furthermore, the 2D creature narrative lends itself to fascinating explorations of how lower-dimensional beings might evolve to survive in a world where higher-dimensional interactions are possible. While it seems impossible for us to hide from a 4D being, there might be strategies for hiding. One thought experiment involves a four-dimensional Swiss cheese. If a four-dimensional object, like a hypercheese with hyperholes, were to intersect our 3D world, the cross-section of those hyperholes might appear as ordinary three-dimensional rooms or spaces where a 4D being could not see us. A Flatlander could hide in the 2D cross-section of a hole in a 3D piece of Swiss cheese dropped on their plane, and similarly, we could hide in the 3D cross-sections of a 4D object's holes. This idea suggests that even in a universe populated by higher-dimensional beings, there might be ways to preserve our privacy and security, but it would require a level of understanding of higher-dimensional geometry that we currently lack. It hints at the possibility of a kind of dimensional arms race between those who can perceive higher dimensions and those who cannot. The 2D creature videos also serve as a powerful commentary on the nature of perception and reality. They remind us that our understanding of the world is fundamentally limited by our sensory apparatus and our cognitive frameworks. Just as the 2D creature cannot perceive the third dimension, we cannot perceive a fourth spatial dimension. The videos invite us to consider what we might be missing, what aspects of reality might be hidden from us simply because we lack the perceptual tools to access them. This is a deeply humbling and liberating thought. It suggests that the universe is far stranger and more complex than we can imagine, and that there may be entire dimensions of existence that are completely beyond our comprehension. The videos also raise questions about the nature of knowledge and proof. How would the 2D creature prove that her gems were stolen by a higher-dimensional being? She couldn't, within the constraints of her two-dimensional world. The evidence of the theft, the missing gems, and the flipped hat would be inexplicable, but not conclusive proof of a higher dimension. This mirrors our own situation. If we were visited by a 4D being, we might have inexplicable experiences, but we would lack the conceptual framework to fully understand or prove what had happened. The success of the 2D creature and her gems videos also highlights the power of storytelling in science communication. Tibees didn't just present the abstract concept of higher dimensions. She created a narrative with characters, conflict, and emotion. The 2D creature is not just a geometric shape. It is a relatable character with feelings, possessions, and a sense of bewilderment. The theft of the gems creates a sense of injustice and sympathy. The return of the gems with a bonus creates a sense of resolution and generosity. The flipping of the hat creates a sense of mystery and wonder. By embedding the scientific concept within a compelling narrative, Tibees made it accessible, memorable, and emotionally resonant. This is a powerful lesson for educators and communicators. Stories are the most effective way to convey complex ideas. The phenomenon also demonstrates the power of participatory culture in the digital age. The original video was just the beginning. The duet, responses, the role-playing, the creative extensions, all of these were driven by the community of users who were inspired by the original concept. This collective creativity transformed a simple educational video into a rich, multi-layered narrative universe. It shows that when people are given a compelling idea and a platform to respond, they can create something far greater than any individual could achieve alone. The 2D creature and her gems is not just a meme. It is a collaborative work of art, philosophy, and science communication. The story of the 2D creature is also a testament to the enduring appeal of Flatland. Edwin Abbott Abbott's novella has been inspiring readers for over a century, and its influence can be seen everywhere from science fiction to mathematics to philosophy. The book's simple premise, a two-dimensional world inhabited by geometric shapes, has proven to be an incredibly fertile ground for exploring complex ideas about dimensions, perception, and reality. The Tibees videos are the latest in a long line of adaptations and interpretations of Flatland's core concepts, showing that the book's ideas are as relevant and captivating today as they were in 1884. The 2007 animated film adaptation of Flatland is another example of how these ideas continue to be reimagined for new audiences. The 2D creature and her gems phenomenon is far more than a simple viral internet trend. It is a powerful and engaging entry point into one of the most profound and counterintuitive ideas in mathematics and physics, the existence of dimensions beyond our perception. By using the simple analogy of a chalk-drawn creature and its precious gems, Tibees has made the concept of a higher dimensional being's ability to interact with our world accessible to millions of people who might never have otherwise encountered these ideas. The narrative of the heist, of the theft that is impossible to detect, the signature that cannot be explained, and the emotional turmoil of the confused two-dimensional creature brings a human and relatable element to an abstract subject, transforming it from a dry mathematical puzzle into a compelling story. The phenomenon is a testament to the enduring power of Edwin Abbott Abbott's Flatland, a book written in the 19th century that continues to inspire new generations of thinkers, artists, and storytellers more than 100 years after its publication. It is a reminder that our perception of reality is shaped by our own limitations, and that the universe may be vastly stranger and more complex than we can ever imagine, with hidden dimensions and beings that could, perhaps, be stealing our gems right now.